So Ashes of Creation has quite a few settings. It can be a little bit confusing on what they do because there's not clear descriptions inside the actual settings itself. So today I wanted to quickly run you through a couple different settings that I advise that everyone has, kind of what all settings do. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about HUD layout and how you can competitively lay out your HUD and not just use the default settings. I see a lot of people still using default settings for the HUD and it's not optimal for PvP specifically. Everything in this video is going to be really orientated around the PvP side of things. PvE in this game is just not extremely complicated at the moment, so if your only goal is to hit rocks and do PvE, some of these settings will be useful for you, but a lot of them are focused on optimization for PvP, speeding up your actions, and just making things a little bit more fluid for you. Since we're looking at the HUD right now, let's start with that. To edit the HUD, you can do two things. One, you can just click on Escape and go to HUD Editor right here. This is how I prefer to edit it now that changes save correctly inside the editor. But also, you can hit the backslash key above the Enter key, and that will also bring up something where you can just quickly move these things, and when you let go, it'll close. That's just a quick edit option. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to HUD Editor and show you a couple different tips and tricks. First thing, when it comes to editing, all of these can be dragged around and put to any place you want, essentially. So that event tracker right there, I can just move that to wherever I want. You just grab it, drag it. In the corner, all of them have an edit icon. Click on that, and that'll bring up options for positioning. Most of these are very granular and no need to mess with them, but the scale is one thing that I definitely will be telling you about. So, a couple different things that you can see here. First of all, when it comes to the actual layout itself of the UI, I don't use the default whatsoever for a couple different reasons. One, the default UI has things like way at the top of the screen, way at the corner of the screen, party widgets all the way on the side. It's basically just your eye has to move a long distance to be able to get very important information at a glance. So what I've done and what many competitive players do is they move everything closer towards the character, which is in the center of the screen, which is where a lot of people are going to be wanting to be looking a lot of the time, since your target is oftentimes going to be kind of centralized. So as you can see here, I've got my player health bar here right below my character. I've also got my offensive target frame right here. And then over here, I have my defensive target. So they're all just in a line, really quick, super fast glances. If I didn't have those there, or they were in the default place, I'd be like looking up towards the middle of the screen all the way to the top left. And that's just more distance to travel, and all of the information is spread across the screen, making it more complicated on where to look. Next thing you can see is there's a space here between my XP bar and the action bars. I highly recommend that you move all the action bars up a little bit closer towards your character, so you're not having to jump all the way to the bottom of the screen with your eyes, so that you can get quick access to your abilities, your health bar. It's all in just this tiny little square, so you can always be looking there for quick information so your eyes don't get lost. The next thing that you'll see is my action bars are actually layered 1, 2, 3 by default. The number 1 bar is at the bottom of the screen, so I actually invert the order so that the primary, second, and third are laid out like this. And the reason why is because primary, oftentimes those are the abilities that I'll put there that I use fast, I use all the time, that are important for quick access, and also just important to know their cooldown for. Next thing that I do here is I make a lot of these UI elements smaller than they naturally are. So you can see here this event thing. When you are in a giant caravan train, oftentimes this event thing will be much larger than this and just fill your entire screen. It's not necessary, so click on the little edit icon, and I drop mine down to about a scale of 60%. So it's really small up there in the corner. I can still enter as offensive, attacker, defender, all that kind of stuff. Same for objective tracker and minimap. I have them at smaller than default size, so it takes up less screen space, creates less clutter, creates less eye fatigue, and in general it doesn't really detract from my experience at all. Also, I would suggest making the player widget a little bit larger, the offensive target a little bit larger, defensive target a little bit larger, just for quick access to information, but the default sizes really aren't that bad. When it comes to these action bars over here, do what you will. That's not going to be really used in PvP much of the time for now. Finally, chat window you can resize. There's currently some bugs in it, so you actually have to resize it out of the HUD editor, and you can just do that by dragging the arrow here to resize the chat bar. Unfortunately, the vertical chat resizing, it doesn't let it go smaller at the moment, so just minimize it if you're not using chat. That cleans up the window a little bit more. You could also do the same thing for the minimap if you're in a place where you don't need that at all. Overall, you can make a really clean UI like this but the main takeaways are move everything towards the center bottom of the screen, move things up from the bottom of the screen, and then we'll go from there. Alrighty, so that's the HUD editor. Now we're just going to go into the actual setting itself. Escape, game options. There's a lot of different settings within this section, but some of them matter, some of them don't, some of them are confusing, so we're going to go through them really quick. Audio, pretty self-explanatory. I would recommend you have audio on. The levels that you choose are entirely up to you, your setup, how good your hearing is, all that kind of stuff. I would recommend your SFX volume is pretty high because that's going to be ability noises. So if somebody is sniping from behind you, etc., you can hear the wind-up much better. These levels, though, are something that I would just advise you adjust and find what works best for you, especially so that if you are comming in a Discord, that your comms don't get drowned out by the sound that is happening in game as well. Sound is very important. I wouldn't recommend playing without it. Oftentimes you can see abilities or no abilities are coming before they actually are visible to you just due to the fact that you have sound effects. Display. None of these settings really need to change. That is up to you entirely. Graphics. I know a lot of you may be interested in knowing graphic settings, but the reality is that Ashes of Creation is still a very much in development game, so optimization has not been a massive priority. All things considered, the optimization isn't terrible. There are a lot of memory leaks and stuff like that that can happen. My recommendation is play around with these settings the best that you can, see what gives you the best FPS, and run with that if your focus is competitive. When you are in large-scale content like Sieges or Guild Wars or Node Wars, FPS drops can definitely happen, so I'd recommend turning most everything to low. Some people do have a problem, though, where low actually decreases their FPS just because it hasn't been optimized correctly. Some people find better results in medium, and it honestly seems like a PC to PC basis. The only thing I recommend that you have on is a higher view distance, just so that you're not losing out on rendering important abilities or foliage and stuff like that. The rest of these are entirely up to you and really what works best on your system, as it seems to vary system to system if medium or low provides the best FPS. Next, we're going to go on to the gameplay. Camera and movement. You're not going to use either of these most likely. If you do, you're crazy. Alright, on to the combat settings. This is an important section, so lock in. Basically, combat settings show combat status on minimap. We'll open up the minimap here, and you can see there's nothing showing. When I target this Grem, there's still nothing showing. But when I attack this Grem, I get the red border. That is basically all it is. If you want it on, you can use it. If not, it doesn't really matter. It's just a good way, I think, to have a visual indicator that you are being attacked or that something is attacking you. Low health border intensity. Basically, when your health bar gets low, there's a glow on the edge of the screen. This just increases the intensity to that. It's entirely up to you. I would recommend just leaving it at default settings. Display stats when 0. Essentially, this is a way just to learn the game and what kind of stats are possible within the game. So if we click on this here, you can see that physical settings, there's everything from my armor. We're going to go to display stats when 0, and then now we're going to go back to our frame here, and we have a ton of settings that are just populated that shows 0. So slash damage multiplier, etc. Turn that off, and those disappear. Attach player effects. This is an important setting. It's a new setting that they added a little while ago. Basically what this does is right down here you can see that I've enlarged all of the buffs on my bar here so I can see everything much easier. When you turn this off, it makes everything small and connects it to your health bar. Like that, it turns it into an item that you can enable or move in your HUD editor. And this is something that I highly recommend you do. Increase the size of these buffs so that you can clearly see what buffs you have, especially when you've got like 10 to 15 of them on. It can get complicated to see. Next, show effect numbers. Basically, that just adds the countdowns to all the effects. There is a border that shows the countdown. Personally, in my preference, I like just having it cleaner with all the cooldown numbers. It gets to be overwhelming and hard to see sometimes, and I can look at the edge of this perfectly fine to see when my abilities are about to expire. Auto attack. There are 3 settings here, and this is going to be class to class dependent on what kind of settings that you're going to change in this. Basically, what auto attack enabled does is that means once you press Q or whatever your auto attack key is, it will continue to auto attack with your ranged weapon or melee weapon. With your melee weapon, it's a little finicky. If you don't hit the target, it won't continue the auto attack chain and will just stop. When it comes to after melee ability, that means that after you use a melee ability, it will start auto attacking. I currently have that setting off, and Mesmerizing Dance on Bard is considered a melee ability since it's a short range. So I'm going to walk up and use it on this target, and now I am not auto attacking them. And that is just once again because I have after melee attack turned off. For Bard, that's very important so that I don't accidentally interrupt the incapacitate that I just put on the target. Next, after ranged, self-explanatory. So I'm going to stop auto attacking here, and I'm going to target this Grem. I don't have auto attack on. I am now just going to press shift 1 and use a ranged ability, and now I start auto attacking automatically. If you turn both of those off, the only way to turn on auto attack is by pressing your auto attack key. So it's Q in my case, that will just start the auto attacks. This is class to class dependent. Play around with these and choose what works best for you. Later on, there is an opportunity to do just auto attack enabled if you want to use soft blocking in tab target, but that's something we'll discuss in a little bit here. So when it comes to abilities and held ability behavior, different classes have different charged abilities. Bard does not have any abilities that are actually held abilities. Some examples are Lightning Bolt for Mage, or Cleric has one as well. Basically, this option is up to personal preference. I would recommend you run Release to Cast. What that means is when you're charging up your Lightning Bolt, you hold down the key, it will continue to charge while you hold it down. The second you let it up, it will shoot the ability. Press again means you press the button, it'll charge, it'll hold, and then you just press again to activate. The other one, I hate it, so don't use it. Otherwise, I would recommend Release to Cast. Trigger held ability, same thing, where it's up to personal preference. I would advise short hold just for the sake of speed of combat. Alrighty, PvP targeting settings. Include untargeted non-combatants with an area of effect abilities. I would recommend you turn this off. This will help prevent corruption. Basically what that means is if there's somebody who's unflagged right over here, I could use my AoE abilities on them, potentially kill them, and that would cause corruption. So I recommend turning that off at all times. Require force PvP to use harmful abilities on combatants. Require force PvP to use beneficial abilities on combatants. I would just have both those abilities on. Once again, it's helping you prevent getting corruption. May use beneficial ability on unaffiliated combats. I would recommend turning this off, especially if you are a cleric or a bard. Essentially what this does is if there is somebody who's flagged up that you're not allied with, you will actually be able to heal them if they're not even in your group, and that's usually something you don't want to do, especially when you're attacking a target. You may accidentally target them and heal them, and that is not ideal. So those two settings are what I recommend there. When it comes to floating text, the only thing that matters is show floating damage text. Always have that on just so you have a good feel for how much damage output you have put into the target. Next thing here is damage text styling. This is up to personal preference. They are changing some of these settings here soon. They recently added the crits with the exclamation marks. I don't think anybody likes that, so I believe Steven said he's going to change that back so that we can at least color criticals hits correctly. Right now, some of these settings don't work. Some of them aren't important. It's up to personal preference and what you can see. When it comes to targeting, right-click to target self. That's unimportant. It doesn't really work very well. It's a little bit messy. Click on field to deselect target is an interesting setting. So right now I have this wolf targeted. If I click on the ground, it will untarget him, left click. That can be a useful setting for dropping targets and reacquiring new targets, but I find in the thick and thin of the battle, if I have this setting on, I will oftentimes like miss a click and accidentally untarget somebody, and instead of having one person targeted, I have nobody targeted. So usually I prefer keeping this off, but it is up to personal preference. If you got really accurate clicks, or you've just got situations where you want to be able to quickly stop targeting without clicking delete, this is the best way that I found to do that. Ground target ability selection type. This one I can't demonstrate on Bard, but basically Hoarfrost, Caltrops on Rogue, a couple other classes have ground targeted abilities. That is the circle that's on the ground and you just put it down essentially. What this does is normal, means that you will click the ability, you can take your hand off the key and it will have that circle, and you're going to have to left click to confirm the ability. Smart cast with template means you hold down the key, it will give you the template of where the ability is going to land, and when you lift up that key, it will instantly cast it. Smart cast means it will instantly cast it the second you press down the key, and it will not give you a preview of the range of the ability itself. I would recommend Smart Cast with template so that you can see the range, but also so that it speeds up the action a little bit. Some people prefer normal though, because you can click on the key, take your finger off of it, move around, and use it as like a range finder to prep your attacks as well. Show target of target. That is a very important setting to have on here. So basically what this is when I target my defensive target, so one of my allies, this right here will appear, and that just shows the target that I am targeting or that my ally is targeting. I can know kind of who they're looking at, and I can also target off of that by clicking on it or with a keybind that will get set up later. Show target cast bar. That is very important. Make sure that is always on. There are many times in PvP and PvE where you're going to want to see the cast bar of the enemy you're fighting just so that you can interrupt important abilities. Allow dual defensive and offensive target lock. Turn that one on. Very, very important in PvP, as it will enable you as a DPS or as a cleric to be able to auto attack an enemy or to heal somebody at the same time, essentially. Also, it allows for DPS to be able to have a defensive target selected at all times and be able to use the target of target keybind to select targets of important priority. So if you have a shot caller, you're going to want to set them as your defensive target by clicking on them, and now it'll sit here and you're going to be able to target off their target. Abilities require clicking target, doesn't work at the moment, don't worry about it. Soft lock. Soft lock is a concept where it is very similar to that of action mode. When you're in action mode in this game and you hover over an enemy, they'll pop up there really quickly and just like move on until you actually target them. I don't really like that setting at all, but basically that is what's happening there. And you can turn this on for tab targeting. So enable soft lock. Now I am soft locked onto that wolf. As I move my cursor around, I will target new enemies. So that Grem, I'm not clicking anything. It's just automatically lightly targeting them, and I can, for example, like auto attack off of this without actually selecting the target. This setting can be really good. The biggest problem is in PvE, you oftentimes will be auto-attacking random targets because of the combat setting that I showed you earlier on, where after melee and after ranged abilities, you will start auto-attacking automatically. So say, for example, I have this wolf over here soft locked. If I had melee ability on and used my Mez Dance and I was just like running through, or if I used my Flourish, I would start randomly attacking this target, which is not ideal. You'll be pulling things you shouldn't all the time. So I recommend if you have this setting on, you only have auto attack enabled, so you can choose when you start auto attacking by pressing your auto attack keybind. Show soft lock indicator above nameplates. That's that little red arrow to show that you are targeting that mob. Show reticle. That doesn't work in tab targeting, but it does work in action. That's the red dot on the target there. On to party and raid. There are a couple settings in here that matter. I would recommend using archetype colors in raids. That just helps you know kind of the makeup of the raid that you're in, so you can quickly at a glance see who is in your raid from just general archetype makeup. Next, we've got show party as raid frames. This is a super great settings for clerics and bards, people who need to have a compact view of being able to see who is in your group and kind of their status. If you have the normal party frames, they're going to be just like the split apart individual health bars. It's a lot more distance to move, information is spread out, and it's more cluttered. I would always recommend having show party as raid frames enabled. Next, enable Hoover target for party members. Basically what that means is in your party menu, you're going to be able to put your mouse over it, use a defensive ability like a jest, a heal, and it'll instantly go to the target without you having to click on them individually and change targets every single heal that you do. This is a vital button to have enabled. Alright, interface. General, I wouldn't use this. It's up to you. Shift modifiers works perfectly fine for being able to bring up submenus. That's basically just the idea of when you right click on an item here, it will bring up the menu for it. Next, HUD. I already went through HUD editor. I would recommend just using the HUD editor at all times. Nameplates. There's a lot of interesting settings that I would turn on this. It really depends on your computer's performance, but we're going to go through them really quickly. My nameplate color, I always make sure that the second I am in combat, my health bar will appear. I have a health bar here and a health bar here, and that's really useful for me to be able to know my health at all times and keep a keen eye on that. I just always have everything related to me always on for names, just so that I know where my mount is, where I am, stuff like that. Neutral nameplate color. Basically, once they're in health bar, I always want their nameplate or the health bar to show up when targeted for mounts and vehicles, just so that there's not names all over all the time. Group member name color, etc. I have it display their nameplates always. In combat, I want their health bars to pop up immediately so I know their status. And then when it comes to group mounts and vehicles, I do the same thing. We've got PvP settings and non-player settings. Non-player settings, I don't worry about. PvP, this is something where I just always have all of their names visible, all of their health bars visible, just so that I can quickly at a glance get a lot of information, and that's really important to me. When it comes to players' nameplate distance, this is something that I would turn up quite a bit if your computer can handle it, so that you're not rendering too many names at a single time. That's something just mess around with. Go to a city when there's a lot of players there, turn it up, see how it affects your FPS. Action bars, I would always show action bar 2 and 3. The rest of these, it's up to you. I would definitely recommend leaving a couple of these up until you migrate the skills to your normal skill bar. Community, chat, entirely up to you on what you do for these settings. Have at it. Accessibility, I would recommend you disable motion blur. Change these as you see fit. In general, they don't affect anything too important to combat. Alright, let's talk key bindings. When it comes to key bindings, this is something that is really player-to-player specific. It really depends on how big your hands are, what your keyboard is, what games you've played before. It varies person to person, and I would recommend just doing whatever feels most natural to you. There are a couple things that I would definitely avoid, though. One, I would avoid just being a complete keyboard warrior. It would be super beneficial for you to have some type of mouse with like 3 to more ability keys on it, because there is a point where you're going to have to take your hands off WASD to be able to move around adequately, and movement is very important in this game for dodging abilities, making sure you're not stepping into shit. So I would definitely recommend that you get yourself like a 6-button mouse, or even some people go up to a Razer Naga, which has like 24 buttons or something like that. That might be a little bit overkill, but some of the classes in this game, such as Bard, such as Rogue, really have a lot of keybinds that you need to have. So I'd recommend not being just a complete keyboard warrior, just due to the fact that you are going to have to run into movement inefficiencies to be able to adequately get every ability spec'd. When it comes to movement, in general, I would just recommend you leave everything at default or change it to whatever feels comfortable to you. When it comes to action bars, this is something where you're definitely going to want to incorporate more of these letters like V, R, G, E, things that are commonly usable or reachable by you. Move them off of unimportant things like E, active block. You really don't need active block on most archetypes. Change it to a key that really works a little bit better for you, but I would recommend using that as something important like a CC break in my case. In general, my settings may look a little bit weird because I do have a Razer Naga and have lots of keys that I have access to on my mouse. But in general, I would definitely recommend that you incorporate a lot more keyboard bindings than Intrepid has by default. Next, when it comes to targeting, you can use the F key to target different party members, but this is a little bit complicated and doesn't work correctly in raids. You won't be able to target the important people that you want to. So I would recommend getting used to click or hover targeting for heals. Target of target finally works. It's something that's super beneficial to have, and I would make sure that you have it on at all times. Specifically, target of defensive target. Once again, that is when you target a creature and their target of target pops up right here. You can use this keybind, whatever you set it to target their target. So if you have your defensive target as your shot caller, you'll be able to instantly target the target that they're calling. When it comes to the other settings, that's entirely up to you. I like a lot of different settings. Caps is kind of nice because it can just cycle through friendly targets that are nearby and not even in raid, and it can just kind of give you a preview of who's around, what kind of classes you're working with. Interface menus, that's entirely up to you. Camera, that's entirely up to you, except you should probably just unbind action mode. It's not great. It's going to nerf you overall. Some people are much more comfortable with it because of their history in games like New World, etc. Here it is going to nerf you for just general ability to target people. Miscellaneous, don't worry about these. Alright, in general, that's settings. If you have any questions, let me know. Reach out to me directly. That's the best way to get a response. And we'll go from there. Thanks for watching.